All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are peeling back the layers on one of the most, radical and mysterious aircraft ever built, the F-117 Nighthawk. And this thing, it's not just a plane. It's really a testament to engineering that felt like it was pulled straight out of science fiction. So, just imagine this for a second. You're a radar operator, right? You're scanning the skies over Baghdad. Your screen is supposed to show you everything, but all you see is nothing. Just static. And at that exact moment, right above you, a predator is opening its bomb bay doors. That was the absolutely terrifying reality the F-117 created.
So the big question is, how in the world did they make a 23,000-kilogram jet, we're talking packed with fuel and bombs, how did they make it completely invisible? This wasn't some kind of magic trick. Nope. It was the result of a totally revolutionary and, let's be honest, kind of bizarre approach to engineering that basically just threw out the entire rulebook.
Okay, to really get a handle on the genius behind this machine, we've got to start with the mission that put it on the map. A mission that really depended entirely on its spooky ability to be a ghost in the machine.
You know what's so amazing about the F-1117 is what it couldn't do. It wasn't a dogfighter. It couldn't outrun, anything. It was basically a subsonic truck that could only carry 2 bombs. Its only defense, its only superpower, was being completely and totally invisible to radar. And wow, as the Gulf War showed us, that one trick was unbelievably effective.
But why? Why did this plane have to be so weird? Well, to understand that, we need to rewind the clock a bit, back to a crisis that almost neutralized American air power completely.
So, in 1973, the Yom Kippur War was just a massive wake-up call for the U.S. military. See, for a long time, the pilot was king of the sky. But that all changed almost overnight. Soviet-made surface-to-air missiles, you've probably heard of them as SAMs, they were a total game-changer.
And get this. Just let this number sink in for a second. 109. In just 18 days, Israeli pilots, flying the absolute best American-built jets, lost 109 of them to these new Soviet missiles. Suddenly, the predator had become the prey.
So of course, U.S. Air Force planners started running the numbers, and what they found was chilling. They calculated that in a full-blown war with the Soviets, the entire U.S. Air Force would be completely wiped out in just over 2 weeks, 17 days. Something had to change, and it had to change fast.
So, faced with this, truly existential threat, the Pentagon was at a major crossroads. This pressure ended up creating 2 completely different, competing ideas for how plane could possibly survive in this new, incredibly lethal environment.
Okay, so on one hand, you had the conventional path. The idea was to fly really low and really fast, using mountains and valleys to hide from radar. That thinking gave us planes like the B-1 Lancer. But then, there was the radical path. A small, super-secret team at Lockheed's legendary Skunk Works, they had a much weirder idea. What if you didn't need to hide behind something? What if the plane itself was the hiding spot?
And the key to this whole thing? You're not going to believe where it came from. A brilliant scientist over at Skunk Works stumbled upon a translated Russian research paper. The craziest part? The Soviets themselves had totally missed how important it was. But buried inside was the key, the complex math you needed to figure out exactly how to make radar waves scatter. It was the secret sauce for stealth.
So armed with this new math, they created a computer program they called Echo-1. And what it spit out? Well, it was a shape made of a bunch of flat triangles. It was a design so jagged, so angular, so, unflyable looking, that even the engineers at Skunk Works called it the hopeless diamond. Seriously, they thought there was no way this thing could ever fly.
Okay, so here's where they were at. They had a shape that was basically invisible to radar, but it looked like it would fly about as well as a brick. Turning that hopeless diamond into an actual functional aircraft meant the engineers had to solve a whole series of seemingly impossible problems.
First big problem, the engines. Think about a normal jet engine inlet. It's like this giant curved cave that acts like a massive bullseye for radar. It basically just screams, "Hey, I'm right here," to any radar for miles around.
The solution was brilliant, really. It was all about layers. First, they covered the inlet with this fine metal grid. It was just the right spacing to block radar waves, but still let air through. Then, any radar that did manage to sneak past got soaked up by this special radar-absorbent material lining the whole inside. They even added extra doors for more air at low speeds and a little sprayer to keep ice off the grid. Just so many clever details.
Okay, so you've hidden the front of the plane from radar. Great. But what about the back? You've got these engines pumping out superheated exhaust. That's a huge heat signature, a perfect glowing target for any infrared-guided missile.
Well, their solution got this great nickname, the platypus tail. Basically, it's this really long, wide, flat exhaust duct. What it does is it takes the hot air from the engines and mixes it with the cool air outside. Then it spreads that slightly warmer air over a really big surface that's covered in these special heat-absorbing ceramic tiles. It was just a super clever way to make that giant heat signature basically melt away into the background noise.
But honestly, the biggest aerodynamic nightmare of them all, it had to be the wings. See, to make them stealthy, the wings had to be swept back at this just insane angle. We're talking 72.5 degrees on the early prototype. Now, for a subsonic plane, one that flies at basically the same speed as a passenger jet, that is just all wrong. It's a recipe for terrible lift and massive instability.
And this crazy design actually created a really dangerous positive feedback loop. It's a little complicated, but basically, the plane's own engines could push it a little sideways. The flight computer would see this and think, oh, that's a crosswind, and it would try to correct for it. But that correction would actually make the sideways slip worse, which would make the engines push it even more, and you can see where this is going. The plane was basically fighting itself. It was a terrifying flaw they had to tame with a super advanced flight control system.
And yet, despite all these huge, almost unbelievable challenges, the team at Skunkworks actually did it. They pulled it off. They tamed the hopeless diamond, and in the process, they kicked off a whole new era of air combat.
So, the big question, was all that trouble worth it? Oh yeah, absolutely. Just look at this analysis the Air Force did after Desert Storm. A stealth mission package, which was just the F-117s and their tanker planes, cost about $1.5 billion over a 20-year period. The old way of doing things, the standard package with bombers and fighter escorts and jamming planes, that cost $6.5 billion. So, the F-117 wasn't just brutally effective, it was also way cheaper.
You know, the Nighthawk's reign at the top, it was incredibly powerful, but it was also pretty short. It flew in total secret for years, absolutely dominated in the Gulf War, but then by 1999, adversaries started figuring out new ways to hunt it. By moving their older radar systems around and only switching them on for a few seconds at a time, Serbian forces managed to get a lucky shot. It was the first and only F-117 ever lost in combat.
The F-117 was officially retired back in 2008, making way for much more advanced stealth planes like the F-22 and F-35. It was, a very specialized tool for a very specific time. But its incredible success as a pioneer, well, that completely changed the DNA of military aircraft design forever.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating thought to end on, right? What started out as this radical, almost impossible niched capability, being invisible, is now the bare minimum for survival. It's the standard. In today's world, the key to winning is to strike before the enemy even knows you're there. The F-117 didn't just create a new kind of airplane. It created a whole new rule for warfare.